Whether you're hungry or not. Why so? If I'm not hungry, the word palette brings to mind a painter's palette, Mary explains. I picture Dali, Picasso, Da Vinci, Van Gogh, Michelangelo, or Detlefsen holding the palette in their left hand, leaning back from the canvas, examining their work with a critical and quizzical yet satisfied expression, perhaps while absent-mindedly twirling a mustache in between thumb and forefinger. If I am hungry, on the other hand, Mary concludes, the word palate brings to mind food. That way of thinking, Miss Mary, has got to go now that we've crossed the Mason-Dixon line and are firmly entrenched in Dixonia. Dixonia? Mary wonders aloud. Yes, it revolves around the Mason-Dixon line. People in the know call the North Masonia and the South Dixonia, Dixie for short. Masonians drink from mason jars, whereas Dixonians drink from Dixie cups. Is all Mary says in reply to that. And in Dixie, a pallet is a jerry-rigged, slapdash sleeping area. What is it in English, Mary wants to know. Just what I said. It's an improvised conglomeration of sleeping paraphernalia. As an example, if Johnny shows up at his Uncle Remus's house and it gets to be too late for Johnny to walk home alone, Uncle Remus may grab a sleeping bag and throw it on the sofa for Johnny to sleep on, or he might simply take an extra pair of blankets and drop them on the floor, one for Johnny to sleep on and the other one for him to sleep under, in some semi-out-of-the-way place where Johnny won't get stepped on by Uncle, when Uncle inevitably gets up in the middle of the night due to being oversaturated from generous helpings of moonshine liquor with which he washed down his cornbread and grits. So if the Brooks don't happen to have a spare bedroom and say they're going to put a pallet on the floor for us, don't get offended thinking that they are intimating that we look like a couple of lift trucks or something. It just means they're going to put some blankets down on the floor for us. Why didn't you just say so? I did. Weren't you listening, Miss Mary? And by the way, speaking about sleeping accoutrements, don't be surprised if they call a pillow a pillar. And if they do, don't think that they're referring in any way, shape, or form to Greco-Roman architecture. Why would I? Why would you what? Warble? I mean Colonel. Mary begins to clarify her inquiry, but is interrupted. Here we are, Mary, 157 Riverside Avenue in West Wego, Louisiana, the home of the first, last, only, and best H.R. Brooks, my old buddy and pal. Warble parks the PT Cruiser behind H.R.'s brand new Mercury Mellencamp, and with an air of excitement mingled with reserved dignity, crosses to the passenger side to emancipate Miss Mary from the metallic chariot. In his best Clark Gable imitation, Warble, all the while imagining he has a pencil-thin mustache, proffers his arm, bent at the elbow, for his wife to use as a sort of handrail. Mary plays along. After all, in this attitude, she can give his humorous a tweak if he does anything worthy thereof. In an affected gait which somehow mixes a bit of Walter Brennan in The Real McCoys with a little of John Gielgud as Dudley Moore's butler in the movie Arthur Warble, with Mary in tow, strides up to H.R.'s front door. Lifting the brass doorknob, a miniature replica of a New Orleans Saints helmet, somewhat daintily between thumb and forefinger, pinky akimbo, Warble raps out a Morse code message to his old merchant marine shipmate H.R. Brooks. In a few seconds, the McGorkles can see a figure approaching through the curved glass at the sides of the door. As soon as the door opens and he sees the tall, mustachioed, curly-haired, stately figure in the Jerry Lewis-type robe, Warble grins broadly. Before our protagonist, or antagonist, however you may view him, can get a word out, though, H.R.'s eyes light up, and he cries out, "War!" But the object of his surfection, surprise mingled with affection, clamps his hand over his old friend's mouth. "Shh, H.R., don't use that name. I'm incognito. Colonel." "All right, War. I mean, what name are you going by then? And please don't call me Colonel," H.R. whispers. "I told you, incognito. Colonel Incognito." "Oh, I get it. You're the Colonel." "Precisely, old chum. And this is Miss Mary Betty Lou Thelma Liz," he says, introducing his wife. "You can call her Miss Mary for short." Hearing a strange rattling sound, the McGorkles turn around. HR's neighbor is running across the Brooks driveway toward them, with a saber in one hand and a musket in the other. He has only run a few yards but is already out of breath, and his white mustache is looking a little droopy, to boot. War? Did somebody say war? Is it the Yankees, returning to the scene of the crime? The old man wheezes out wonderingly, barely able to catch his breath. Because I'm ready for them. Bring it on. The South's gonna rise again, and remember the Alamo. Chapter 12. Calm down, neighbor, calm down, HR admonishes. Nobody said anything about war. My friend here was simply asking me who the 29th President of the United States was, and I... Ah, phooey, HR's neighbor interjects, waving his hand in a dismissive gesture. President of the United States, my chicken-fried sycamore. President of the Yankee States, maybe? Jefferson Davis is my president, don't you know? And Robert E. Lee, my vice. With that, the disappointed man leaves, dragging his saber and musket on the ground behind him in a manner strikingly reminiscent of a caveman, club in hand, returning home from an unsuccessful wife or mastodon hunting expedition. After the McGorkles have been escorted into the Brooks parlor, Warble congratulates his old workmate on his quick thinking. Nice one, HR. Beautiful, in fact. You haven't lost it. No siree, Bob. You certainly haven't lost it. Just as smooth as ever. Don't mention it, old salt. Tell me, though, why all the intrigue? Warble explains to HR all about the plots and schemes to wrest his world-beating inventions from him and how he needs to lie low for a while, and asks if he can hole up with HR and his family for a spell. Anytime, pard, anytime. Mi casa es su casa. Thanks, HR. Thanks, Warble replies, a look of confusion clouding his face. HR explains that his wife isn't home from shopping yet. She went to the supermall and retreats into the kitchen to grab some liquid refreshments for his guests. As soon as HR is out of earshot, Warble turns to Mary and says, Did you hear that, Miss Mary? Hear what, Colonel? About the supermall? No, before that, HR was speaking Latin, the language of priests, lawyers, and other crooks. He said, mi costa, su costa, which means, when translated, if it costs me, I will sue you. The nerve of that guy. Oh, Colonel, dear, I'm sure it was all a joke. You said HR didn't have a serious bone in his body. Yes, you're right, Miss Mary. It must have been meant in jest. An old shipmate would never do that to a friend. By the way, Warble, why was HR's neighbor getting so excited about car rental agencies and dog food? What in tarnation are you talking about, Miss Mary? Are you feeling all right? Were you out in the sun too long? Don't give me that line, Colonel. You heard him talk about Alamo, too. I know you did. He said the South's gonna rise and shine, and don't forget the Alamo or something like that. Oh, that! Don't you know anything about Southern mythery, Miss Mary? Mythery? What's mythery? What's mythery? What's mythery, you so ignorantly ask? Why, the South would be nothing without its mythery. It's a real mythery, I mean mystery, that you don't even know the term, Miss Mary. Shameful. Absolutely shameful. Warble makes a sound with his tongue on the roof of his mouth that is supposed to be shame-inducing. Oh, come off it, Colonel, Mary says, tapping her foot impatiently. What is mythery, then, if you're so smart? As everybody knows, Miss Mary, mythery is the combination of mythology and history that defines the South. For example, HR's friendly neighborhood neighbor over there, old what's-his-face, mentioned two chief elements of Southern mythery, the South rising again and the Alamo. True dyed-in-the-wool, way down yonder in the land of cotton types believe that the Blue Ridge Mountains are going to get taller as the Rockies recede in elevation. Eventually, the South will be taller, elevation-wise, than the North. They will then build forts on every mountain ridge, where they can look down on and monitor everything the Yankees do. Why don't they just move to the Bronx and buy a season ticket? Mary inquires skeptically. Miss Mary, you're drifting on me here. Come on, concentrate, focus. You'll never learn anything if you don't pay attention to me. Ready? Warble fixes Mary with an intense and challenging look. Mary simply stares back at Warble, arms crossed, right foot beating time on the parquet floor to the rhythm of her heart. Now, Warble proceeds, the Alamo is a hard-shelled animal that lives in the Texas desert. If not for the Alamos, the early Texicans would have starved to death. No surviving Texicans, no Texas. No Texas, no South. So the Alamo is the official animal of the South. Incidentally or coincidentally, whichever you prefer, the Alamo's unique protective skin layers were the inspiration for a certain type of automobile tire. Warble smiles smugly, proud of his almost limitless knowledge of things both arcane and obscure. Priceless, Colonel, simply priceless, HR says as he returns to the room, lemonades in hand. He had taken the words right out of Mary's mouth. The McGorkles, without even having given it any advanced thought, have planned their trip to Louisiana perfectly. HR happens to have just returned home from a long voyage as captain of the merchant vessel Freedom of the Seas and will be, for a full month, a man of leisure. At first, the days pass pleasantly. The two couples pay a visit to the French Quarter, where Warble expounds and expands on 1. The history of Dixieland. Jazz. It was inspired by the sound that the crickets, bullfrogs, and manatees make in the swamps at night. Satchmo Armstrong lived there, along with his best friend Satchel Paige, and converted the sounds of the swamp to bugle noises. Satchmo had been a bugler in the war between the states, you know. 2. Bourbon Street. The locals got up in arms about a tax on whiskey that the British were imposing and whacked the bungholes out of all the barrels of bourbon the Brits had ported up the hill to the top of the street. They wouldn't have minded being taxed after drinking the bourbon. It was being taxed prior to drinking it that got their dander up. Their battle cry of freedom was no taxation without intoxication. Spurred on by this snappy slogan, rivers of the golden fluid were wasted, soaking the wooden sidewalks, which thereafter warped into a curlicue shape, somewhat akin to the look of cuticles that have never been trimmed. 3. The French Quarter itself. The original French Quarter was a 25-cent piece commissioned by Madame Bovary of and for Napoleon. On the head side, Mr. Bonaparte is depicted eating a bowl of the ice cream flavor named after him, and on the tail side, he is applying Desinex to the up until then incurable itch he had just below his left nipple. Warble is explaining to Mary about the great New Orleans hero Mardi Gras, for whom the residents of the city hold a large soccer match each year. To wit, how Mr. Gras was a pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies when they won the World Series, and how he made New Orleans famous by singing "When the Saints Go" marching in under his breath, while beating out time with his mitt on his thigh as he walked off the mound to the dugout after each successful inning outing, when a policeman knocks at the door. Chapter 13. HR opens the door. "Good morning, sir," the officer greets him. "Good morning to you, officer," HR replies, curious about the purpose of the visit. "What can I do for you?" "Is that your car in the driveway, the PT Cruiser, that is?" Warble has been listening to the conversation from around the corner. Hearing the officer's question about his car, Warble knows the gig is up. The borrowed license plate has been traced, and he and Mary are about to be arrested if he doesn't think of something pronto. He grabs a pillow from the sofa and pulls Mary close to him. He whispers in her ear, "Mary, stuff this under your blouse. You're pregnant." "I'm what?" Mary asks incredulously. "You," Warble says, pointing at his wife, "are pregnant." He looks imploringly into his wife's eyes. With a little help from her husband, Mary pushes the pillow up her blouse. Warble examines his handiwork. "Not bulky enough, I reckon," Warble mutters under his breath. He turns on his heels, looking for some type of filler to enhance the overall effect. In desperation, he grabs a volume from the bookshelf. Ocean Steamships. "There, perfect. Let's go," he says to Mary, pushing her ahead of him toward the front door. After determining that H.R. Brooks is not indeed the registered owner of the car in question, the officer asks if the owner of the vehicle is currently within the residence. The McGorkles rush toward the door at that very moment. Warble practically shoves Mary right into the officer and yells, "Orifice! Orifice! My wife is pregnant. She's about to give birth. We need an escort to the hospital right away." HR takes a step backward and stares at his house guests, mouth agape. While he and the officer exchange quizzical glances, Warble presses his mouth against Mary's ear. "Come on, start moaning pitifully, Mary," he says under his breath. Mary lets out a moan which makes up for an effort what it lacks in believability. Frantic now, Warble yanks open the door and half pulls, half carries Mary outside. Orifice, please, there's no time to lose. The doctor said that it is imperative that my wife make it to the delivery ward as soon as the contractions start. And they have. Warble finishes his sentence looking over his shoulder at the officer and his old friend HR as he shoves Mary into the back seat of their car. As the officer seems unconvinced of the urgency of the situation, Warble pulls out all the stops. Orifice, if you don't escort us to the hospital right now, I'm going to sue the city, the police department, and you personally. The officer shakes his head and starts walking toward his vehicle. All right, sir, but afterwards we have another matter to discuss. No problem, Orifice. Don't worry about that. It's all a big misunderstanding, I'm sure. Probably a case of mistaken identity or finders keepers or whatever. We'll see, the officer responds. All right, follow me, he says, as he gets into his patrol car. Warble waves goodbye to HR, who is standing on his lawn, simultaneously shaking and scratching his head. At the bottom of the driveway, Warble slams on the brakes, leaps out of the car, and flings open the back door. He reaches under his wife's blouse and removes the pillow and the ocean steamship's book and tosses them, one after another, onto the lawn with a frisbee wrist motion. Gotta go, HR. Thanks for everything. I'll explain someday. Watch for me on Letterman. With that, Warble screeches out of the driveway and follows his escort for a couple of turns until he sees the sign for the expressway leading out of town. He turns down a side street to ditch the fuzz and is on the road to freedom before the policeman realizes what has happened. Ha ha, so long, copper, Warble says when he gleefully discovers there are no black and white cars in his rearview mirror as he reaches top speed on the expressway. Mary scrambles her way forward into the front seat. Warble starts singing, "Leavin' Louisiana in the broad daylight." Maybe I should have stayed back there, Mary mutters, gesturing toward the back seat. Or at least we could have kept the pillow a little longer. Miss Mary, that would be stealing. That was HR's pillow, you know. Couldn't we consider it borrowing, Colonel? Warble wags his finger at his wife and says in an authoritarian voice, the one he always adopts when he is quoting some well-known and well-nigh indisputable figure. Remember what the Arabian tribal leader and wise man Shakespeare said, "Neither a borrower nor a lender be." What about the license plate and the license plate holder that you borrowed, Colonel? Mary inquires. Miss Mary, sometimes in compromising situations, compromises must be made. You know the old adage, necessity is the mother of retention. We needed those things, so we retained them. You mean you retained them, Colonel? Mary points out. Yeah, but you were the lookout man, woman, Belle. You, my lovely and charming wife, are in cahoots with me. You are my accomplice, my partner in crime. In a word, give or take a few, our fates are intertwingled. Intertwingled? Haven't you been keeping up with word power in Reader's Digest, Miss Mary? Intertwingled, a situation in which two people's lot in life are both intertwined and mingled with that of the other. It's sort of like symbiosis. And then again, it's not. Oh, brother, now I've heard everything, is all Mary says to that. Miss Mary, what is it with you and this Abraham and Sarah complex? I told you, I am not your brother, nor do you have to pretend that I am. Besides, who would believe it? We look nothing alike. I'm tall and you're short. I have short hair and you have long hair. I have a mustache and you, well, that doesn't mean anything. We still don't look alike. Colonel, I have no idea what you're talking about, Mary says flatly. She is about to ask her partner in crime a question about their destination when he says, Miss Mary, look, and points to the city limit sign. We are about to enter one of the most culturally significant cities in America, Baton Rouge. Chapter 14. Mary looks at her husband dubiously. She really couldn't care less about Baton Rouge and its supposed cultural significance, but she knows the inevitable is coming. An in-depth lecture from her husband about the whole shebang. Mary, imagine our country without sports. No football, no baseball, no basketball. You can't, can you? Well, Mary begins to respond, but Warble did not really mean the question in anything but a rhetorical way, and proceeds. Without sports, this country would be nothing. Without a drive and a fervor to win, how could we have won World Wars I and II? we wouldn't even have had a concept of what winning means. So, to make a long story less long, the free world can thank sports for saving their culture, their institutions, their very lives even. That's all very logical, Mary says sarcastically. Well, it's pretty obvious when you think about it, isn't it? Warble continues. Anyway, I said that to say this. Sports would not have been possible without eye black. Warble pauses dramatically to let his bombshell sink in. He looks at Mary expectantly. After a few seconds of bewildered attempts to make sense of what he's trying to tell her, Mary finally gives up. Black? Who was I? Black. Who? Who? Who was I black? Warble replies, practically beside himself in disbelief at his wife's ignorance. Nice owl imitation, Colonel. Now who was he? Mary demands, irritated. He? Warble repeats, still incredulous. That's the most monotonic laugh I've ever heard, Colonel. It makes Marlon Brando sound like Andy Griffith in Face in the Crowd. Merlin who? Warble asks, total consternation written all over his face. All right then, it makes Pat Paulson sound like Charo. Warble frowns at his wife and shakes his head. Hardy har, very funny. Now I feel it is my duty to inform you that I black is not a man, nor any gender of human, for that matter. What is it then? Mary is now, in spite of herself, genuinely a little curious. Eye black is that charcoal-like stuff that athletes put under their eyes to keep opposing players from looking into their eyes and seeing which direction they're going to run. That's what it's for? Sure, what else? When you look at someone and they are wearing that stuff, that's what your eye gravitates towards. You focus on the eye black. Then you are distracted, and by the time you think to look in their eyes to see where they're looking, so you can guess where they're going, they're already gone. They're there already. It's all too much for Mary. She expels a sigh of exasperation and tries to change the subject in her mind. But her focus keeps homing back in on Warble's explanation about eye black. All right, I'll bite. What does all that have to do with Baton Rouge? Elementary, my dear spouse. What is America's sport? Soccer, Mary answers, in the mood to beat Warble at his own game. Soccer? Are you bonkers? Soccer is the most popular sport all over Central and South America. Mary finishes the sentence with a sweet lilt to her voice, batting her eyelashes. Miss Mary, Warble explains, exasperated, but trying to remain calm and sound patient. When I say America, I'm talking about the United States of America. Oh, Mary says, knowing, of course, what Warble had meant all along, but enjoying her technical victory. Now, Miss Mary, answer me this. What is the sport of these higher United States of America? Football. Football? Come on now, Miss Mary, get serious. When you think of the USA and its signature sport, when you think of the rest of the world thinking about the USA and its #1 sport, what sport comes to mind? Football. Football is more popular than baseball, Mary explains, knowing what Warble wants her to say, but being in a cantankerous mood, refusing to say it. Maybe more people swim in football pools than baseball pools, Warble grudgingly admits, but that doesn't prove football is really more popular. Star Trek and Love Boat are no longer on TV, but the news is. Does that make the news more popular than those two classic shows? Before Mary can answer, Warble pushes his argument forward another step. What sport is called America's pastime? Everyone's heard of Abner Tripleday and Baby Ruth, but nobody has ever heard of Brett Favre or O.J. Simpson. Case closed. Have it your way, Colonel. Thank you, Miss Mary, but I'm not hungry yet. Right now you need to find out about America, baseball, eye black, Baton Rouge, and how they are all interconnected. Lay it on me, Colonel, Mary says, sarcastically feigning a sitting on the edge of her seat level of anticipation. Although eye black is used in both baseball and football, Warble explains, its use in baseball reaches further back into antiquity and is more important in a cultural context due to the aforementioned reasons. This city through which we are passing at this very moment in time is where eye black was invented, following which the name of the town was changed from Maybelline to Baton Rouge, and the name change is proof positive that baseball is America's sport, not football. How so? Mary asks. Well, you'll notice that the city wasn't named Puntin Rouge, Passin Rouge, Kickin' Rouge, block in rouge, tackle in rouge, defensive coordinator in rouge, or any other whatever in rouge. You see, my dear, this city was named for our national pastime. Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge is rouge for batters. In other words, it's makeup for baseball players, eye black to be specific. Then why is the name of the city spelled B-A-T-O-N instead of B-A-T-T-I-N apostrophe? Mary asks. She thinks she has Warble dead to rights. Miss Mary, everyone knows that people from Louisiana are very, let's say, casual about spelling. Who has time to learn how to spell with all the cotton to be picked, crawdads to be caught, alligators to be wrestled, accordions to be squeezed, banjos to be picked, plucked, strummed, and otherwise manhandled in the kitchen with Dinah while grinning to beat the band, and fiddles to be sawed and scraped? Warble reasons. Perhaps it's not a misspelling at all, Mary suggests. Perhaps eye black was originally used by the girls in the marching bands who twirl and toss batons. Yeah, right, Miss Mary, Warble guffaws. What a preposterous hypothesis. Why would they need to intimidate an opponent? Have you ever seen a baton twirler wearing eye black? After all, he concludes his argument, the baton toss twirl is not an Olympic event, so no hopeful representative is likely to assault another to get a leg up on her competition. Women are just not competitive. That's why they don't run countries and start wars and wear eye black. Chapter 15. I have a question to ask you, Colonel, Mary says as she and Warble head back onto the expressway after stopping for lunch at the Citizen Page on the outskirts of Jackson, Mississippi. Shoot, Warble shoots back. You should be glad I talked you out of getting a gun, Colonel, Mary teases. Her stomach is full, the sun is shining, and she is, for the moment at least, enjoying herself. I am glad about that, Miss Mary. That copper back in West Wego may have acted a little differently if he would have espied a firearm in our little beauty here, Warble says, giving the PT Cruiser's dashboard an affectionate pat. And by the way, you won't have to call me Colonel much longer. Thank goodness. That's what I was going to ask you about. Does that mean we're leaving the South? Yes, ma'am. We're heading for Dayton, Ohio, to the domicile of my old compadres, Wayne Wax and Bob Shiska. More old shipmates? Yes, indeedy. They both live in that city. After tiring of the sea, Wayne went into some sort of service-oriented business, and Bob plies his trade as an electronics technician. Do they know we're coming? Of course. I told them I'd look them up sometime, and this is sometime. Wouldn't you agree? Mary remains silent. It is sometimes embarrassing being Warble's wife. On the other hand, she has to admit that it is more interesting than being married to some old, predictable, steady and dependable, normal person. Mobile, Alabama provokes a monologue from Warble about Big Jacks, the club Elvis made famous in his song Guitar Man. Montgomery, on the other hand, conjures up images of Rosa Parks, who, according to Warble, once hijacked a bus and forced the driver to take her to Woodstock, where she led the crowd in a Sly and the Family Stone sing-along of the old Andy Williams spiritual, Born Free at Last. Montgomery also makes Warble think of, and talk about, Martin Luther King, who, again according to Warble, was the great-grandson of Martin Luther, elder brother of B.B., and who became famous for smashing his guitar over the head of a Catholic priest while singing, "You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille," with 400 children and a crop in the field. When they arrive in Nashville, Warble has already informed Mary that she should pronounce it Nashville. Warble's eyes light up. Mary, I've always wanted to try my hand at being a country music singing sensation. I've got an idea. I'll start a band and get rich and famous here in Nashville. I'll call my combo Cowboy Warble McGorkle and his Warbling Warbleman. What do you know about being a cowboy, Warble? I'll bet you don't even know the difference between a cow and a cowlick. Oh, yes, I do. A cow is a large dairy animal that says, moo, and cowlicks are those squarish white things that grow in cow pastures. All I've got to do to become Cowboy Warble is to dress the part, buy a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, one of those oval belt buckles with my name on it, and say Yahoo and Yeehaw a lot. But Warble, honey, you can't sing. I won't need to, Warble replies. I'll cover all the talking cowboy songs. 16 tons, I got stripes, up against the wall, redneck, and these boots are made for walking. I can talk, you know." "Yes, you can," Mary agrees, rolling her eyes and shaking her head. "You certainly can talk." "All right, fine. But where are you going to get the warblemen?" "Are you kidding, Mary? Didn't you see all the derelicts around these higher parts? All I've got to do is offer a few of them a bottle of booze a day and the odd pretzel, and I'll be all set." "You're going to have a band of derelicts?" "Sure, why not? That's the customary way of doing it, isn't it? They'll pretend they're playing instruments. Some cheap ones we'll rent from some broken-down old music store. But the real music will be coming from a karaoke machine hidden backstage behind the curtain." "So your band of booze and pretzel derelicts will be faking it?" "Sure. They'll play air steel guitar, air bass, air banjo, air mountain dulcimer, air drum sets, and air cowbell." "Wait a minute. I just thought of something," Warble says, his countenance darkening. "I thought I heard a strange sound." "Hardy har har. Very funny, Mary. You're a real card. But I just realized I can't go through with this." "Warble, are you getting a conscience after all?" Mary asks, unable to mask the tone of hopefulness in her voice. "No, it's not that," Warble replies, dismissively waving his hand. "For me to follow through with this plan, I would have to chew tobacco in order to play the part of a genuine cowboy, and I can't do that. All the teeth would rot out of my head, and where would we be then? Can you imagine me up there sing-talking like this?" Warble curls his lips over his teeth and talks while exaggeratedly moving his mouth up and down like Kermit the Frog giving Bert and/or Ernie a piece of his mind. "If you see me coming, you'd better step aside. A lot of men didn't, and a lot of men died. I would be the laughing stock of the entire country music industry. No, my illustrious career, which would most certainly have garnered me a spot in the Country Music Hall of Fame before all was said and done, is over before it even began. Oh, well, let's get out of this burg. I don't really like country music anyway. Besides, we've got more important business on our agenda." The McGorkles watch Nashville gradually recede from sight in their rearview mirror. The next stop is Frankfort, Kentucky, where the name of the city inspires Warble to gorge himself on frankfurters at a deli on the outskirts of town. After a good night's rest in a room at the Motel 94.2, the McGorkles head towards Cincinnati the next morning. After a quick breakfast of cinnamon rolls, coffee, hash browns, and scrambled eggs at the Citizen page nearest their motel. Shortly after crossing the Ohio state line, Mary asks Warble, "How much further is it to your old cronies' homes in Dayton, Colonel?" "You can cut that Colonel crap now, Mary," Warble says, a little irritated. "We're not in Kaintuck anymore. We're out of the South. People here would think I was some sort of a dope if you called me that here." "And how would that be any different than usual, Warble?" Mary asks, smiling sweetly and innocently. Warble just frowns, shakes his head, and mumbles something incoherent in reply. He turns off onto a gravel road, finds a secluded spot, and stops the car. Chapter 16. "Warble, what's up?" Mary inquires. Warble doesn't even look at her. He just reaches under the seat, grabs the screwdriver, and gets out of the car. Within a couple of minutes, Warble has their old license plate back on. He tosses the Louisiana plate into the bushes. "We're cheeseheads again, Mary," Warble says as he gets back in the car, having seemingly regained his cheerful disposition. The McGorkles arrive in Dayton in the early evening. They take the first exit into town and pull into a gas station. While Mary fills the car, Warble walks over to the phone booth at the side of the building and calls his old friend Wayne Wax. No answer. He then tries Bob Shiska's house. Warble hears a weary voice on the other end of the line after the fourth ring. The monotonic, bored-sounding voice makes Warble think he's listening to Bob's "I'm not home. Leave a message" recording. "Oh, great," Warble mutters. "What's great?" Bob answers, not recognizing Warble's voice. "Bob, is that you?" Warble says, standing up straighter and clutching the phone more firmly. "Yeah, it's me," he answers. "Of course it's me, you buffoon," he thinks. "Who else would it be? Grandma Moses?" Bob suppresses his vexation, though, and simply asks, "Who's this?" "It's Warble, bud." "Warble? Warble McGorkle? What the heck? Where are you?" "I'm down here at—" "I don't know where I am exactly to tell you the truth. I mean, I'm here in town. I'm in Dayton." No kiddin'. What are you doing here, you old rascal? I came here to see you, and Wayne Wax, Warble answers. He doesn't mention that he had called Wayne first. He figures that what Bob doesn't know won't hurt him. Old Wayne's probably out cleaning somebody's rug, Bob says. He's in the toupee business? Warble asks, surprised. He can't quite picture it. Toupee business? No, he's a carpet cleaner. Oh, I got you now. Okay, enough of this small talk. Are you up to some company? Bob is tired. He was up late the night before looking at oscilloscopes and testing circuits. He's an electronics nerd who finds things fascinating that most people would consider dull as a doorknob. Nevertheless, he's always ready for a little craziness, which, based on his merchant marine memories, are synonymous with the name Warble McGorkle. After all, the fatigue Bob is suffering from isn't so severe it can't be taken care of with a pot or two of coffee. Are you kidding me, old pal? You get right on over here. We'll get a pizza and some beer, and it'll be just like old times. You know I'm married now, Bob. Yeah, that's right. So I heard. You married Paige Turner, didn't you? No, we were engaged, all right. But I actually ended up marrying her sister Mary. No kidding, Mary? Yes, why? What's so surprising about that? I didn't even know Paige had a sister Mary. She does, she did. She does, yes. But I married Mary, so Mary is married now. So she, Mary that is, changed from being my fiancé sister to my ex-fiancé sister when my ex-fiancé, Paige that is, changed from being my fiancé to my ex-fiancé. Nevertheless, they're still sisters, I suppose. Although Paige is probably really jealous of Mary now, whereas it used to be the other way around. Warble goes on in this vein for quite a while, but finally ends the conversation, monologue, and gets directions from Bob on how to get to his house. When the McGorkles arrive, following the obligatory introductions, small talk, and exaggerated compliments, Bob orders some pizza and leaves a message on Wayne's cell phone to bring his family on over and join them as soon as he can. And to bring some beer, too, if he wouldn't mind. Warble and Bob catch up on what's happened in each other's lives since their years working together in the Merchant Marines. After a few minutes of being primarily a listener to the conversation, Mary gets bored with the guy talk and gravitates toward the living room and turns on the television. Bob apologizes that he doesn't have any wine coolers in the house. Mary doesn't normally drink beer. He calls Wayne back and leaves another message, requesting that he pick up some of those too. Bob and Wayne grew up together in Dayton, attending the same grade school, middle school, high school, and even trade school together until they finally joined the Merchant Marines together on an unofficial buddy system. The two beers that Bob has in the house and the conversation are both depleted at about the same time. Warble and Bob look at each other, a little embarrassed that the conversation has subsided so quickly into awkward silences, and that the tone of their conversation is a little stilted. The easy camaraderie they used to enjoy when they were in the same boat together, literally and figuratively, has faded in the intervening years. Maybe once Wayne shows up, and the trio relive a few of their glory days, embellished via the lubrication a few more beers will provide, they will loosen up. For now, Bob suggests that they join Mary in the living room. He begins to explain to Warble all about his new stereo system, all its specifications and features, when Wayne returns Bob's call. Warble can tell, more or less, what Wayne is saying based on Bob's end of the conversation. Hello? Wayne, how goes it? You won't believe who's here at the house. No, it's not LeBron James. No, it's not him either. And no, it's not her. Come on now, get serious. Okay, enough with the guessing, I'll just tell you. It's Radicalia. Radicalia was the nickname Bob and Wayne had given Warble in the Merchant Marines. Warble pretended to be engrossed in the used car commercial on TV, but in actuality was listening intently to the conversation. He hoped, of course, that Wayne would seem excited about he and Mary being in town. Yeah, just now, a few minutes ago. They just arrived. His wife, Mary. Bob turns his face away from the McGorkles and cups his hand over his mouth in the phone. But they can still hear him say, No, it's her sister, Mary. I didn't either. Yeah. Bob then resumes his prior relaxed pose, self-consciously removing his hand from over his mouth and the telephone's mouthpiece and glancing over sheepishly at Warble and Mary, hoping they hadn't been paying attention to the call. They had, of course, but Mary pretends to ignore the whole conversation. She has a bemused expression on her face, while Warble's is non-committal. Bob continues the conversation with Wayne in an overly loud voice. "When can you come? Are you on your way?" "All right, good. What are you talking about?" "Sure, bring the kids. What do you think?" "All right. Don't forget the beer." The phone clicks. Bob realizes he forgot to also remind Wayne about something. "Ah, Dad, blast it. I forgot to remind him about the wine coolers, too," Bob says, embarrassed at his lack of consideration for Mary. "I'll call him right back," he says while beginning to enter Wayne's number. "Don't bother, Bob, please," Mary says. "It's not a big deal. If he doesn't remember, I'll have a beer. Or water. Don't worry about it." Mary was adamant enough, but Bob persists with the almost obligatory confirmation. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, Bob. Thank you, anyway." The Wax family shows up 31 minutes and 24 seconds later, give or take a few milliseconds. After the introductions and friendly but politely wary, figurative circling of one another has died down, this time the awkwardness is more between Mary and Janet, Wayne's wife. The two couples and the bachelor Bob begin to settle socially as each gradually takes stock of the others and finds their relative place in the group's pecking order. The pizza and beer help as the men quickly revert to their old merchant marine personas. They recount old stories, exaggerated in the retelling for the benefit of the women, who the men think are listening but really are not. The mood of the women seems to mirror that of the men, even though they, for the most part, refrain from drinking. Wayne's business is going well, and his summary of how it began and evolved only takes a few minutes. Bob could go on forever about his electronics business, hobby, but Wayne already knows all about it, and Warble tires of it quickly, so they change the subject. "So, Warble," Wayne ventures, "what have you been up to?" He hopes Warble is doing well enough, but not so good as to make him look bad by comparison. "This and that," Warble mysteriously replies. Then he deflects the curiosity by joking, "I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you." The obligatory fake laughter is short-lived. The ensuing silence embarrasses Warble. After all, these are his old buddies, and they are hospitably hosting he and Mary. He owes them more than a curt brush-off. "What I can tell you, fellas, is that I've got several irons in the fire, several big inventions and ideas, but I'm being pursued by somebody or some organization who wants to steal my ideas." "Really?" Bob says, perking up. He's simultaneously curious, a little skeptical, and a bit worried as, if this is true, it could mean a little danger for himself. He is harboring Warble, after all. Chapter 17. When Warble wakes up in the morning, he stumbles into the kitchen to see if he can track down some coffee. Bob has already left for the day. A note on the kitchen counter says that he and Mary should make themselves at home, and that he'll be back sometime that night. He doesn't know exactly when, but they'll figure out something for dinner when he does get back. If they don't want to wait for him, they can help themselves to anything in the fridge. After opening every cupboard but one, Warble finds the coffee. In a few minutes, he's sitting at the table, sipping Java and reading the Dayton Daily News. By the time he's through with the paper and awake enough to start feeling restless, Warble hears Mary stirring. He pours himself another cup of coffee and waits for his wife to join him. After Mary eats a little and has a glass of orange juice, she doesn't drink coffee. She says that if they're going to stay another day with Bob, they'll need to do some shopping. Warble hates grocery shopping, but even shopping is better than sitting around an empty house with nothing to do. So the McGorkles arrive at the mall a few blocks from Bob's house just as it opens for the day. As Mary picks up shampoo and hairspray and other such things, Warble wanders around the mall, from store to store, trying to find something that will catch his eye. He has no interest in approximately 94.2% of the items. For sale at the mall, knickknacks, clothes, books about how to lose weight and get out of debt, stuffed animals, cookies. Warble is a little hungry, but not for something sweet. Not at the moment anyway. He wants something that will stick to his ribs. He would really like to have a cheeseburger from Citizen Page, But then he would have to track down Mary since she would be irritated with him if he ate without her. Just a little snack, something salty preferably, would tide him over for a while. Warble spots some vending machines and walks over to them to see if there's anything that strikes his fancy. Candy bars, soft drinks, potato chips, nuts. The nuts don't look too bad. They seem like the best thing available. Warble drops in 3/4 and selects the peanuts. As he wanders around the mall, slowly eating the nuts, Warble notices the guarantee printed on the package. If for any reason you are not completely satisfied with this international nut product, please retain this package and contact us. We will cheerfully refund double the amount you paid for it. Warble smiles to himself, and after emptying the rest of the contents of the package into his hand and tossing them down his gullet, flattens out the package, folds it in half, and stuffs his find deep into his pocket. When Warble locates Mary, she is bordering on ecstasy over the bargain she has found at some boutique or other. Warble feigns interest and attention as Mary drones on and on about how much she has saved. It doesn't sound like such a bargain to Warble, but then again, he doesn't exactly keep current with the price of things. He hasn't purchased any new clothes for himself since he was in high school. Mary, I've got to make some money quick to satisfy that makeup mania, that accessory addiction of yours, Warble asserts. Mary ignores Warble's ever so slightly veiled complaint. She's hungry and doesn't want to reason with Warble, or try to reason, or argue, or discuss, or anything else you might call it. She wants to eat, and she wants to eat now. Let's go get an early lunch, Warble. There's a food court around the corner. Mary orders tacos, and Warble procures for himself a couple of cheeseburgers from Citizen Page. After she has eaten enough for her mind to switch from her stomach to what Warble had said, Mary asks her husband, not a little warily, "What did you mean by making money quick, Warble? What do you have up your sleeve now?" "It's not up my sleeve, sugar pie, it's in my pocket." "What is in your pocket?" Mary asks. "This," Warble says, reaching deep into his pocket and proudly presenting his prize, the peanut package. "What's this?" Mary asks, understandably confused about the significance of an empty nut wrapper. "Read it," Warble directs. Mary exhales, in a mixture of exasperation and slight trepidation. "Just what I always wanted to do. Read the pros on a package of peanuts," Mary says sarcastically. Nevertheless, she shakes her head, rolls her eyes, and reads in a monotone, "Peanuts, International Nut Company Peanuts." Mary does not want to read anymore. She doesn't have to, as Warble is too excited and impatient to wait for Mary to get around to reading what he considers to be the juicy part. He snatches the package out of her hand and, pointing to the guarantee, reads it aloud, gesturing animatedly all the while. "If for any reason you are not completely satisfied with this international nut product, please retain this package and contact us. We will cheerfully refund double the amount you paid for it." "Double, Mary, double! This insanely rich company will pay me double the amount if I am not completely satisfied." "You didn't like the peanuts, Warble?" Mary intones skeptically, cognizant that Warble is no connoisseur. "I didn't say that, Mary, they were fine. But that's not what the guarantee says. It says that if you are not completely satisfied, they will refund double the amount you paid for them." "How much did you pay for the peanuts, Warble?" Mary asks, doubtful that Warble's scam/scheme is even worth pursuing, regardless of how unsatisfied Warble may claim to be. "That's irrelevant, Mary. I'm not thinking peanuts here. I mean, I am thinking about literal peanuts, of course, but I'm not thinking small amounts here." "But Warble, you only bought one package." "So far, Mary, so far. I'll find some place where I can buy crates and crates of this stuff, thousands of dollars worth, open one package, eat a few, decide I'm not completely satisfied, and believe me, I won't be completely satisfied until I get the double or nothing damages." "Oh, Warble, you want to bilk a poor old unsuspecting nut company?" "What's that you say there, Mary? Poor old unsuspecting nut company? Have you gone nuts? They probably pay the peanut pickers a pittance. Imagine those poor, pitiful palookas out there in the blazing sun, toting that barge and lifting that bale all the livelong day, with nary a break and barely a pretty penny to show for it. I'll be a hero to those people. I'll be the Robin Hood of the goober gatherers, the Spartacus of the peanut pickers. So you're going to divide the money with the workers? Mary asks, although she knows better. One thing at a time, Mary, one thing at a time. I've got to rob the rich first, then we'll go from there. I see. Good, then you'll help me. I didn't say that, Warble. Then you're going to leave me in the lurch, Mary. You expect me to work my fingers to the bone providing for you, while you just sit back and watch serial dramas while downing bucket loads of caviar and munching on artichoke hearts all day long? I'm not just a hero of the working man, I'm a martyr. Yes, dear, Mary says, and shuffles off toward the car. Her shopping spree is over. Warble catches up with her. He wants to convince her of his rightness in this affair. Besides, Mary, this is my duty as a red-blooded American. It's my opportunity to demonstrate my Yankee ingenuity. Come to think of it, I'll also be providing a priceless service to the International Nut Company because I'll be exposing the hole in their guarantee, which they can subsequently close, after I make my loot, that is. I'll end up saving them millions, no billions, of dollars. They should, in addition to my double refund, give me a large reward for pointing out their faulty guarantee. Chapter 18. Warble rises from bed chipper as all get out the next morning. He has a plan and is confident of its success. He had felt so effusive, expansive, and generous the night before that he had treated his host Bob and the Wax family to dinner at Jean de Grenouille, an expensive French restaurant. It is Saturday morning and Warble is the first one up and around. He puts on a large pot of coffee and sits down at Bob's computer to compose his letter to the International Nut Company. Of course, certain of the details will have to be filled in later, such as when and where he will buy the crates of peanuts, his specific experience in being not quite completely satisfied, and of course he will have to include the receipt. By the time Bob rises and drags himself to the coffee pot, Warble has completed the draft. To whom it may concern, a good day, let me get right to the point. I purchased cartons of your double refund guaranteed peanuts. I regret to inform you that I am not completely satisfied with your product. May I remind you that your guarantee explicitly states that if I am not completely satisfied, I am due a 200% refund. Well, I'm here to tell you I am not completely satisfied. No, sir. Or ma'am, sorry about that. I don't mean to sound like a male chauvinist or anything like that if it's a chick who receives this missive. As a point of order, I learned this from Perry Mason, so I want you to know you're not dealing with some wet behind the ears greenhorn tin horn here. I would like to take the liberty to quote, in full, your guarantee as printed on your product's packaging. It says, to wit, if for any reason you are not completely satisfied with this international nut product, please retain this package and contact us. We will cheerfully refund double the amount you paid for it. So you can plainly see that I have you over a barrel and have caught your overly generous guarantee writers or overly careless lawyers, whichever it is, red-handed, because I am not completely satisfied. I would gauge the degree of my satisfaction with your product at approximately 94.2%. Since that manifestly does not denote complete satisfaction, which would require 100% satisfaction, a degree of satisfaction your peanuts definitely didn't achieve with me, I must sadly and regretfully request, post haste if you please, the double refund due me. Enclosed you will please find, you see, just because I have outsmarted your lawyers, or whomever doesn't mean I can't be dignified, professional, and polite, a photocopy, my mama didn't raise no fools, of my receipt for your faulty product in the amount of. You can make out the check from your oodles of moolah, which you have extorted from the poor and oppressed workers and hungry folks of the world, who waste their money on your less than completely satisfactory product, to the order of Warble Poundcake McGorkle, and send it to the following address: Warble McGorkle, C.O. Bob Shiska, 157 Riverside Avenue, Dayton, Ohio, 31415-9265. P.S. Fork over the dough, but quick. Otherwise, I will unleash a legion of lawyers, an array of attorneys, an army of advocates, a battery of barristers on you. P.S. Revisited. Hopefully a word to the wise, or at least those who know what's good for them, which side of their bread is buttered, etc., is sufficient. P.S. Revisited addendum. If not, although I hate to be a name dropper, I must confess that I do have a certain business arrangement with a certain gentleman named Guido, who is, let's say, not normally prone to being gentle, delicate, and dainty in matters of this sort. Sincerely, your obedient servant, Warble P. McGorkle. Warble P. McGorkle. Warble is enormously satisfied with himself, definitely more satisfied with himself than he was with the peanuts, although, to tell you the truth, they were just as good as any other peanuts he had ever had the pleasure of masticating. After Bob goes to work, Warble impatiently waits for Mary to wake up. After a few minutes of pacing back and forth between the kitchen, the living room, and the door of the guest bedroom, the 5 cups of coffee are probably playing a role here, Warble's impatience to get his business consummated overwhelms him. He rustles through Bob's kitchen drawers until he finds a pen and pad. He scratches out a note to his wife. Mary, I'm at Price Biz buying peanuts. Be back soon? Warble. Chapter 19. Warble marches into the Price Biz mega warehouse store and makes a beeline toward the first associate, Price Biz's democratic-sounding moniker for a poor working stiff. He sees. Say, bud, do you have cartons of International Nut Company peanuts? He asks. Peanuts? Peanuts are on aisle 11. We have Planters, we have... I don't want Planters. I want International Nut Company. No problem. I think we've got them too. I think the Planters are on sale right now, though. I don't care about that. I don't want Planters at any price. I'm a loyal fan, advocate, and customer of the International Nut Company, best in the business. I do all my peanut trade with INC. The Price Biz associate eyes Warble warily. Okay, whatever you say, sir, he says, pointing him in the direction of aisle 11. In a scant few seconds, Warble spots the INC peanut boxes. Most of them are on the top shelf, out of reach of just about anybody not employed by the NBA. Warble considers whether to call one of the Price Biz associates to help him, but quickly decides against it. He can scramble up there himself and get the nuts in the time it would take him to track down one of those sorry rascals. Just as he's about to climb up onto the shelves to shove the boxes down to the floor, Warble catches himself in a tactical blunder. He realizes he had better make an account of his cash first to see how many boxes he can afford. After a quick inventory of his liquid assets, Warble sees that he's only got $314 cash on him. He could use his credit card, but he doesn't know how far he is from his credit limit and doesn't want to go to the hassle of finding out. He would have to either call the credit card company, which would take longer than Warble's patience would allow, or call Mary, who would not be happy about him spending the last of their remaining assets on what she views as a scam. Warble decides to buy as much as he can with the cash on hand. Once he doubles his investment, when the INC pays up and finds out how much credit is left on the card, he can make a bigger purchase the next time. Calculating how many boxes he can buy, Warble jumps up as high as he can, trying to tip the end of the box with his fingers enough so that it will fall off the shelf. After a couple of unsuccessful attempts, Warble mutters under his breath, "Dad blast my European-American blood!" Irritated, Warble scales the giant shelf. On the way up, he knocks over some boxes of Pop-Tarts and crushes some humongous packages of marshmallows with his foot. Warble finally reaches his goal and slaps down 7 boxes with his right hand, while holding on to a vertical support on the shelf with his left. One after another, the boxes hit the floor. Baft! 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 A couple of curious shoppers look over, a little taken aback at Warble's quick-fire box-dropping technique and apparent obsession with peanuts. Just as a Price Biz associate arrives on the scene to investigate the unusual goings-on, Warble leaps, cat-like, to the floor. The associate looks as if he's about to ask Warble what he's doing, but a look from Warble that falls somewhere between slightly surly to downright menacing, depending on your skill at interpreting such facial gestures, stops him in his tracks. As Warble stares him down and stacks the peanut boxes on the floor, the associate backs off and turns on his heels, returning to whatever it was he was doing, or not doing, prior to the commotion. Warble sees he has the young man cowed. "Boy!" Warble barks out. "I say, boy, bring me a cart for these cartons." Out of a mixture of fear of what Warble might do or say next, and irritation from being yelled at and called boy, the associate hesitates for only a fraction of a second and then takes off in the opposite direction, running like a bat out of Dallas, if bats could in fact run, that is. Warble is like a bear when it comes to people running from him. His natural instinct is to chase them down, slap them upside the head, turn them upside down, and then shake them like a rag doll until all their change falls out of their pockets. Warble spins around and dashes to the opposite end of the aisle, which is closer. He then turns left, running parallel to the direction of travel of the wayward associate. As he comes to each aisle, he looks down it to see if he can get a glimpse of the fleeing Price Biz employee. "You can't get good help nowadays," Warble grumbles as he continues the pursuit. One of the associates, that is to say, one of the other store employees, hears Warble's complaint. Without missing a beat while she stamps prices on a crate of bread and butter pickles, she shakes her fist at him and yells, "You get what you pay for, you know." A third associate, who also hears the discouraging words pass Warble's lips, picks up a can of dog food and heaves it at him with all her might. The dog food canister misses its mark and, instead of beating Warble in the head, as was her intention, knocks over an economy-sized jug of antifreeze 2 aisles beyond him and to his right. The antifreeze jug hits the floor with a mighty thud, bursts open, and gushes its iridescent cyan-colored fluid all over the floor. Warble is just about to catch up with the fleeing associate when there is a juxtaposition of his path and that of the newly arisen river of antifreeze. It is a wonder that bananas have such a reputation as slip inducers when antifreeze works so much better. Warble is on his back in an instant, sliding forward and spinning around counterclockwise at approximately equal speeds. Warble finally comes to rest, so to speak, when he slams into a bank of tires. It could have been worse. The tires cushion the blow of the impact for Warble as he smashes into them, and the tires fall to port, starboard, larboard, aft, and every which way. Besides Warble, 2 hillbillies and somebody's grandma are buried beneath the anarchy of rubber. Warble looks around at the aftermath. He's glad to be alive. He is lucky, too. He just missed hitting a long red metal contraption that would surely have done him serious bodily injury had he smashed into it rather than the wall of tires. The associate Warble had been pursuing, who has now apparently regained his courage, stands over the prone potential purchaser of piles of peanut packages, smiles broadly, and points at the metal contraption. "There's your cart, sir. Have a nice day," he says and struts away, not even bothering to help his poor, beleaguered fellow associate in the tire department extricate the guests buried beneath and among the scattered steel-belted radials. Wordlessly, Warble rolls over, inspects the damage, is disappointed to find he has no superficial marks which could lead to a windfall in a personal injury lawsuit case, and resigns himself to sticking with his original plan, the relatively small-time and tedious peanut double refund opportunity. Warble drags the cart behind himself with one hand and returns to the aisle where he left his cartons of peanuts stacked. Warble desultorily loads the cartons onto the cart and heads to the checkout line. "What was that big commotion back there? Did you see it?" the associate at the checkout stand asks Warble as she rings up his sale. Warble glances at her and shrugs. "I don't know, for sure. I heard that 2 skateboarders and somebody's personal fitness trainer got into a big heated argument over tires, dog food, and antifreeze. I didn't pay much attention. I try to stay out of other people's business." The associate, disappointed with the man she considers a boring old fuddy-duddy and angered at the oblique rebuke, silently finishes ringing up the sale. Efficiently, coldly, in a workwoman-like fashion, she informs Warble of his total, accepts his money, and hands him his change. As Warble pulls his cart away from the checkout counter, the clerk follows his progress with her eyes, a scowl on her face. She looks around at the associates and guests in the vicinity, and when she is certain nobody is watching her, sticks out her tongue at Warble as he walks away. He is, of course, oblivious to her disrespectful gesture. Warble is about to step into the automatic door opening zone at the store's exit when he notices a sign hung from the ceiling above the customer service desk. He parks his carton of peanuts next to said counter and approaches it. Chapter 20. The process of obtaining a Price Biz credit card only takes a few minutes. Warble falsifies most of the information on the application, such as race, religion, color, creed, national origin, and political party. He claims to be an African-American member of the Aryan nations from Iceland. For political party, he divulges only If you provide door-to-door limousine service and all the booze I can drink, I'll consider gracing you with my presence at your party." The obviously painfully bored associate quickly scans Warble's application, sets it aside, and asks him to toe the mark in order to have his photograph taken. Warble objects. "I don't allow people to take my photograph. I believe that if I allowed you to photograph me, you would capture my spirit, and then where would I be, spiritless, huh? Answer me that, if you can." The bored associate, instead of being grateful for the change to her routine, no matter how minuscule or insignificant, exhales exasperatedly and pops her gum. "Look, mister, you want a Price Biz credit card, which is good in all 314,159 of our stores in this entire country, as well as some yet to come in Canada, Mexico, Guatemala, Guam, and East Timor. You gotta let me take your picture." "Well, in that case," Warble replies, and places his feet directly on the outline of the shoes painted on the store's floor. When the mugshot has been transferred to a laminated card, the associate hands it to Warble and smiles as insincerely as is humanly possible, and repeats the spiel about all the stores in which the card is valid. Warble snatches the card from her hand in mid-sentence, says, yeah, and pushes his card out of the store. As the automatic door closes behind Warble, yet another associate, who had overheard Warble's last remark, rushes up and asks the customer service associate, "Was that Paul McCartney?" The bored gum popper glances at the application, having forgotten Warble's name already. "No," she answers. "Who's Paul McCartney?" she adds, looking at her co-worker as if she had just arrived from Venus. I won't bore you with the details of Warble driving home, finishing his letter to the International Nut Company by filling in the number of cartons he purchased and their total price and so on, and mailing the letter. In fact, the next few days go by in a rather humdrum fashion. Bob goes off to work, Mary establishes a routine in her temporary home, and Warble sits around all day impatiently waiting for the mail to arrive. Each afternoon, Warble expects a letter from the International Nut Company accompanied by a check, a profuse apology for their failure to satisfy him completely, and effusive thanks for pointing out to them the error of their ways, their erroneous ways being the wording of their guarantee in such a litigiously porous manner. Finally, the day Warble has been eagerly and anxiously awaiting arrives, and none too soon, for like fish, after several days at his house, the McGorkles have begun to stink a little in Bob Shiska's estimation. The letter arrives. Chapter 21. Warble rips open the envelope and pulls out the letter. He sets it aside for the moment and looks at the check. It is made out to him exactly as he directed, and in the expected amount, $628.32. Warble pumps his fist in the air. "I did it! I'm a genius, I tell you, Mary." "Yes, dear," Mary says and turns away. She returns to the kitchen where she is preparing dinner. Warble folds the check in half and places it, not without a certain elan, a veritable flourish, into his wallet. He then picks up the letter to savor the kudos and words of praise he is certain will be found therein. When he finishes reading the letter, though, he bolts into the kitchen. Mary, listen to this," Warble begins, so upset that he is panting. "Not only does the INC fail to thank me and praise me for my selfless and altruistic efforts in their behalf, they tell me not to buy any more of their product. Check this out. Mr. McGorkle, blah, blah, blah. Although we were somewhat amused by your letter's content and presentation, we must warn you that this check, issued as a gesture of goodwill and blah, 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 as a recompense for the moment of mirth, respite you provided this dour old blah, 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 request that you purchase no more of our product." Imagine their nerve, Mary. They don't want me, one of their best and most loyal customers, who passed over the more popular and even a trifle less expensive brand so as to purchase their wares, to discontinue my trade with them. Dagnabbit, I won't do it. Sometimes you have to stand up for your rights, Mary, and this is one of those times. I will purchase whatever brand of peanuts I darn well please to. Mary, working at the kitchen sink, looks over her shoulder at Warble. "But Warble, I thought you weren't satisfied with their peanuts. Why would you want to purchase more of them?" "Whose side are you on, Mary?" Warble says in a plaintive voice. You vowed to stand by me no matter what, through sickness and health, for richer, for poorer, and now you side with the International Nut Company over me. Mary drops what she's doing and turns around to face Warble. Honey, don't look at it that way. I was just asking a question. Warble realizes that he may have been a little too hasty in launching the attack on his wife, especially since it's getting near supper time and he wants to eat, without fear of being poisoned. All right, sugar pie, I'm sorry I jumped all over you. I apologize from the heart of my bottom. From the heart of your bottom, Warble? Mary asks, hands on hips, body tensed for action, in battle formation as it were. I meant from the bottom of my heart. You know that, Mary, Warble replies. From the bottom of my heart. Anyway, to get back to the salient point, I will not take this lying down, standing up, sitting on my haunches, in an angle of repose or in any other bodily attitude. I will not be deterred from purchasing as many International Nut Company peanut packages as I darn well choose to. If those peanut mavens in their ivory tower, probably constructed from the bills of near-extinct woodpeckers, think they can stop Warble Poundcake McGorkle from exercising his freedom of purchasing power, they've got another think coming. And what think is that? Mary asks. What the Dallas are you talking about, Mary? You said they've got another think coming. What sort of think do you imagine it to be? The one you think they have coming, I mean. Don't even think about it, my darling wife. It's unthinkable. If you say so, Warble. I did, I do, and I will continue to, forevermore, quoth the Warble. Our broken-down hero of the Ohio afternoon strides resolutely to Bob's computer and launches his favorite word processor. Bob's favorite, that is, not Warble's, as Bob does not have Warble's favorite word processor installed. Something that irritates Warble to no end, as the keyboard shortcuts he relies on so heavily are not available. Warble is going to draft another letter to the International Nut Company and fight fire with fire. Their demand for a cease and desist in the purchase of their product is going to be met with a counter-demand from Warble for a very large settlement, or else. 31 minutes and change later, Warble has finished his letter. Mr. Autodidact, good day. As on the previous occasion of my earlier epistle to you, allow me to get right to the point, straight away, as the Brits say. In your correspondence with me, you ordered me, quite rudely I might add, to discontinue my trade with you and your less than completely satisfactory product. Here is my response to you, Mr. Didact. Hold on to your hat and take a seat if there is any history of heart problems in your family. 1. Go jump in the lake. 2. You might as well follow number 1 above, because after I'm through with you and your amateurish attempts to intimidate me and shut me down, you'll be all washed up anyway. 3. It is my duty to inform you that it is my intention to purchase hundreds of thousands of cartons of International Nut Company peanuts. I now have the wherewithal to buy your entire supply of said product. 4. Why not save me and yourself a lot of hassle, wasted time and energy, and simply cut me a check for, let's say, $3,141,592.65? In exchange for the aforementioned modest check, I could hold out for more, you know. But in the interest of expediency, and because of my personal affection for you, Otto baby, I will graciously sign a legal document assuring you that I will never again seek redress from you for another dime, or any amount for that matter. I agree to cease and desist forevermore. 5. Add another $628.32 to that check, or make out a separate check, I don't care, because my earlier refund was not made cheerfully. It is with great sadness of heart that I am compelled, forced, driven by sheer weight of conscience and duty, to remind you that your guarantee says, and I quote, "We will cheerfully refund double the amount you paid for it." That was not done. I'm sure you would have to, with head hung in dejection, admit. Your mistake, Mr. Didact, has cost your company dearly and may cost you your job. Have a nice day. Sincerely and from the heart of my bottom, your obedient servant, Warble P. McGorkle. Warble P. McGorkle. If necessary, that is, if Mr. Didact does not respond in a positive way to Warble's letter in a timely manner, Warble plans on traveling throughout the United States, visiting all the Price Biz warehouse stores, and purchasing all the International Nut Company peanut cartons they have, using his PriceBiz credit card to do so. He will then pay for the purchases from the check he will receive from INC, when he receives his double refund, and will still be ahead millions of dollars. The response to Warble's latest letter comes even more quickly than the first one had. During the 3 days prior to its arrival, Warble had spent his time planning a world vacation, a new mansion for Mary and himself, contemplating how many servants he will need to hire and how he can get out of paying them, which tax accountant to engage, and all the other stressful things a person of Warble's eminent stature needs to do. Most importantly, Warble is planning what exactly to say and do on the full hour of television time he's going to book to explain to the world his manifold inventions. Nobody will be able to steal his ideas then. He'll have gone on record publicly as their originator. When the long-awaited message from the International Nut Company finally arrives, Warble practically suffers an apoplectic fit in his rush to open it and kiss the wonderful, beautiful check made out to him, in an amount that will ensure his comfort and more for the rest of his natural-born days.